Welcome to Kitco News. I'm Niels Christensen. We're here at the Silver and Gold Summit in San Francisco. Joining me today is Amir Adnani, President and CEO of Uranium Energy Corp. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's good to connect with you.
It's really nice. Yeah. And we're at a Silver and Gold Summit, but today we're going to be talking about the other yellow metal.
I know, I love talking about the other yellow metal. Kitco needs more of the other yellow metal.
Which is?
Uranium. It doesn't make very good jewelry, and you can't really put it on necklaces and things like that, but it's a heck of a good source of energy generation.
And let's jump right into this. We did see former Energy Secretary Rick Perry. He was in Europe talking about small modular reactors, SMRs. Could this be a game changer for the energy market and for uranium?
It's an incredibly bright spot when it comes to developments in the field of nuclear energy, these small modular reactors, particularly in the United States, where individuals like Bill Gates has poured his own capital, hundreds of millions of dollars of his own capital into development of various designs of small modular reactors. They, in my mind, have a different use than the larger kind of 1 gigawatt reactors. You know, if you have a big city and you've got millions of population whose electricity needs you want to develop infrastructure for, you're going with bigger reactors. But there are so many efficiencies, cost efficiencies, easier ability to deploy and build in remote areas or smaller population areas where you don't need a big giant 1 gigawatt reactor, where these smaller modular reactors can become a game changer for sure. And again, the US Department of Energy has given grants for research in this area. Guys like Peter Thiel, Bill Gates, et cetera, have been committing capital and investment in it. And I think in the US, where we already have the largest nuclear reactor fleet in the world, there are 97 units operating, there isn't the need to build more large-scale reactors. That's what China's doing. China's doing the larger scale construction. The US could really benefit from this.
Do we need to pay more attention to nuclear energy? In that, you know, like, I mean, we've been inundated with climate change protests and demonstrations and stuff like that. Should we be looking at nuclear as the energy source?
If we look at the big concerns when we look at bigger trends, right? The bigger trends with population growth, the bigger trend around the need for more electricity that's carbon emission free. If we look at all those sort of bigger trends, I think the conclusion becomes that we need an energy mix. And in that mix, we need to have nuclear power because it's still to this day the only source of electricity generation that we have right now that's CO2 emission free, that's reliable, it's around the clock, it's 24/7, it's baseload, it's always available. Those qualities about nuclear power make it such that I think in every discussion about climate issues and concerns, we must have that, because otherwise we're not going to be able to meet these temperature goals that are being set for addressing the issues around climate change. And I think you see this changing narrative where climate organizations and climate scientists are changing position or pivoting towards including and embracing nuclear power as part of the solution. So I absolutely believe that.
Yeah, I don't think you can take any option off the table when it comes to the environment. But let's take a look at prices. Unfortunately, the other yellow metal is not doing as well as the original yellow metal. Prices are about down 15% on the year. What's going to get prices back up? I mean, part of it too is it's so opaque. I mean, what supply and demand look like?
I think earlier in the year when I was on your show, I said something along the lines that Trump will define the uranium market in 2019. And what I meant was not to depart from supply-demand fundamentals, but was to simply highlight the fact that the U.S. government this year has made and is expected to make policy decisions around potentially rejuvenating the uranium mining industry in the U.S. And these pending decisions have cast a cloud of uncertainty around the broader global market, because the US is the biggest market for uranium in the world. So if the global market kind of sits and says, look, we got to wait to see what the rules are going to be in the US. And so it started with a Department of Commerce investigation that was wrapped up on July 12th. On July 12th, the president created a White House working group, gave them 90 days. The 90 days then got a 30-day extension. So this cloud of bureaucracy, this cloud of uncertainty hasn't cleared. And so I think as a result, you have a situation where the uranium price has underperformed year to date. But the long-term fundamentals on supply-demand alone suggests we should see uranium prices really higher than these current levels, because demand for uranium is projected to be 190 million pounds. Production of uranium is expected to be 140 million pounds. So there is a gap between primary supply, production, and demand. And the market is tightening and demand is rising. And this is a setup that hopefully will display stronger price action in 2020.
I guess bottom line is, I mean, watching your previous interviews, 1% of domestic production of uranium in the U.S. equals 1%. I think you said it's not even enough to power one nuclear reactor. So, I mean, bottom line, I mean, no matter sort of what happens, we need more uranium. We need to get more mineral.
Absolutely is a critical issue when you look at supply chain. The supply chain for uranium and nuclear fuel in the U.S. has basically been decimated. You have a situation where, again, I call it the 99% problem. 99% of requirements of uranium are being imported. You wouldn't operate any industry that way. You wouldn't operate your household that way. You try to mitigate supply chain risks by having a more diversified set of suppliers geographically, methods of mining, etc. And so it's mind-boggling that the U.S. plays such an important role in being the largest consumer of uranium, yet we've given up the entire uranium mining industry. This is something that, again, is going to be a big news item going into the end of the year, because there are expectations of some news and announcements, hopefully, from the president himself.
Could it be, do you see this as a potential election issue for next year as well?
I don't see it as an election issue, because I really believe that the timelines to get some solution and remedies out of this will get resolved before the end of the year.
Okay.
So before we go into full-fledged mode next year, this will get resolved. Having said that, I really need to highlight this, that in Washington, D.C., there is bipartisan support for nuclear energy.
Yeah.
In fact, it doesn't get talked about as much because I guess it's not contentious, because they agree on it. Both left and right, the Nuclear Energy Innovation and Modernization Act was signed by bipartisan support, because the left sees the values of the clean sort of benefits that nuclear energy has with being CO2 emission free. And the Republicans see it as a national security issue, that these nuclear power plants provide this predictable source of energy, the baseload energy.
It's interesting. I mean, it's an idea to help promote clean energy. But the mining side of it, I mean, we've seen some pushback. The stuff that's going on in the Grand Canyon, or around the Grand Canyon, the proposed uranium mine 10 miles outside of the Grand Canyon, a lot of pushback from that. I mean, how do you get that message out that, sometimes some of these projects are going to be a necessity?
I think you got to step back for a second, though, and say, whether you're in the U.S. or Canada or any other country in the world, right? There are going to be mining projects proposed in certain areas that will be sensitive, and there might be an environmental sensitivity. It might be not in my backyard, and I don't think you can be. It may not necessarily be all a case of overcoming all of them, and I don't think we paint all the projects with the same brush. Look, the reality is the U.S. is a pretty big country, and there are many places, many jurisdictions, and many regions where you have prospective areas for uranium mining that don't have environmental sensitivity issues around it. Okay, and I'm not suggesting anything here on the Grand Canyon, because it's not an area that my company is involved in, and I don't want to necessarily suggest it's good or bad, because there are companies active there. all I'm saying is that I think the biggest issue for mining industry, forget uranium mining industry today is stakeholder relation and making sure that you involve and work with your stakeholders, your regulators, your local communities to get that community support. Without it, it's not a uranium mining issue. I think it's mining broadly. And I think companies are becoming so much better at this than ever before. The community relations, social side of it is so powerful. And uranium, it's an important part of how projects need to be developed in the future.
Thank you very much. Fantastic comments. Obviously, a passionate topic for you.
Thank you. Yeah, no, it is, and it's great to get an opportunity to talk about it with your audience on Kitco. And I want to say that I think we have a really exciting few months here. Hopefully, again, the bureaucracy gets cleared up. Market fundamentals always prevail at the end of the day. And I'm looking forward to that.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Niels.
Thank you for watching Kitco.com. Stay tuned for more coverage from the Silver and Gold Summit.